think, the one thing that's stuck out to me, and I'm going to circle this completely back to your podcast, is that, the first one that I listened to was Don Gelastino. But I remember when he closed his interview with you, he talked about knowing your numbers. If you're running a team or running a company, if you're an entrepreneur, and, he was talking about getting a job and, he'd figure out the costs and throw 30% on top of it, 35%, win the job, and he's winning jobs, and then didn't realize he was digging himself into a hole until a CPA pointed it out. And he talked about the importance of truly knowing your numbers. I remember that hit home with me. And so I would reiterate what Don said. That is probably the most ironclad advice for any entrepreneur that we can give.
Hello, and welcome to the Elevator Careers podcast, sponsored by the Allred Group. I am your host, Matt Allred. In this podcast, we talk to the people whose lives and careers are dedicated to the vertical transportation industry to inform and share lessons learned, building upon the foundation of those who have gone before to inspire the next generation of elevator careers. Today our guest is Nathan Hall, the Chief Elevator Enthusiast at Vasile Elevator, a designer, manufacturer, and installer of premium commercial elevator interiors, cab shells, entrances, and doors. Vasile Elevator was started with old world grit, determination, and an absolute dedication to quality. Nathan joined Vasile 13 years ago, and with his background in the hospitality industry, he has brought passion, enthusiasm, and an ever-present desire to learn and improve. Nathan, welcome to the show.
Thank you. I'm thrilled to finally be here. It's been a
I'm
been a
excited
long,
to have you.
It's about the journey, they say, and it's been a journey for you and I, but I'm excited. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, no, it's a lot of fun. So obviously we've seen each other at some of these conferences. I mean, I think it was in Louisville. What was that, a year and a half ago or something? And we talked about doing this, and I think we'd even we tried before, and it's like life gets busy. There's a lot going on.
It is, and it seems like we're always juggling, and for some reason it feels like if something's further out on the horizon, it seems more plausible, right? And then the day approaches. Gets there, and all the realities that you felt every time you tried to schedule something just hit you again. So, but now we're here now, and it's good to talk. I enjoy your show so much. So many great interviews. It's incredible how many you've done already since I first learned about your show, and since we first talked about this episode. So, yeah, thanks for that.
Yeah, thank you. It's a lot of fun. I mean, I was thinking as I was waiting for this to start, I was like, I just like doing this. This is a lot of fun. I get to know a lot of people. And it's something I've always just loved to do. So maybe it's just an excuse to do what I love, which is get to know people.
That's great. Listen, if you can find excuses to do what you love and put yourself in that place where you're doing it more frequently, you're doing something right. I think enough of us know that as we get further in our careers, that's important. And we hope that we're. So.
Yeah, absolutely. So let's talk for a minute about 25 years. I saw that a few weeks ago, maybe it was a month or so ago. Vasile Elevator, 25 years. Tell me about that 25-year mark. That's big.
Sure, it really is, and it's kind of surreal for us. I came to this industry and this business about 13 years ago, joined the company, and at that time we were 12 years in business, and we looked at other companies who had been in business for 20, 30 years as kind of giants to us, right? They've been so long in business. So for us to be at that quarter century mark is really incredible. We think about, how long ago that was when Vasile started this business with just a dream and truly a seed back in '99. And it's really neat to see how far we've come as a team and how large our operation has grown. But as you always notice, even though you're growing, how much more there is that you can do or that you want to achieve, that you never feel fully satisfied. But to us, it's pretty exciting. It really is. We feel like we're certainly much more mature as a team and as an operation. We also just last week had Employee Appreciation Day. That's a national holiday. And as a fun thing, we decided to take all of our team members and put them on a chart and then put a blank space next to each person that you could fill in how many years they've been there and come up with what's the total years of experience that the Vasile Elevator team has at Vasile Elevator, not in our careers, just here at this company. And so with about 35 people on that chart, I was pleasantly surprised to see we had 201 years collectively as a team. And we've got a number of people who are new on the team who've just been here. They're just sort of inside their first year here. So to see that we were still that many years aggregate, the average is pretty high. So
Yeah,
it's a mature feeling. That's what I'm getting at. We feel a lot more mature than we ever did before in this industry, which is nice. It's nice.
Yeah. A lot of what are they called? Tribal knowledge, right? Just knowledge of things that happen here, between each other, between, the business and customers and everything that's going on. So that's
Correct.
awesome.
Correct. Yeah. You start to feel like, every industry, if it's a new industry, can feel a little overwhelming, and you feel a little lost in the beginning. I joined this company in this industry, so it was something completely new. I had been in hospitality for 10 years just prior to coming into this industry, with a 2-year break to do my global MBA. And so I didn't, like a lot of stories that I hear, people didn't plan to be in this industry. They kind of found themselves in this industry. And so I had to learn it all from zero and from scratch. And after having been in my previous industry and career for a decade, I felt very knowledgeable where I was at. And it wasn't much you could ask me that I didn't have an answer for, right away where to find it. And so to start over from zero was a little bit daunting, but now down the road and having the team around me, because most of the people here at the company, this is also their first place in the elevator industry with also here. And so to see that we have the answers so often, and that we know where to look, and you kind of feel a little bit like a mini consultant in what you do, because even if it's not related to our segment of the industry with elevator cabs, we still know so much, and we have the good fortune to interact with so many people, customers, vendors, through the different organizations and the many projects we're on. That you really know the industry tapestry so well that it feels, actually it's more exciting. It was exciting in the beginning when we started, like so many companies, and you're on that roller coaster, that early roller coaster, and that's where we came up with the coin term elevator enthusiasts.
Yeah, I was going to ask you about that.
Right. So the segue there. So so when I came into this business and started working with Vasile and his daughter, Iona, my partner, I really was trying to understand exactly what does this company do, and why do we exist in the elevator market? Why doesn't Otis and at the time ThyssenKrupp, now TKE, and these other OEMs, why don't they just do the elevator cabs themselves? And so little by little, I started to see and understand that the elevator cab interiors, like the one behind me that I'm sitting in right now.
Yeah.
Thank you. They're kind of their own animal. It's not, it's something that the elevator industry has, but it's really much more interior design, especially if you're going to work in the condo market down here in South Florida. The condo market, a lot of high-end condos, a lot of high expectations. People want to design things that are bespoke and really fit their building and their standards and their aspirations. And so that's not the sweet spot for an elevator contractor, who's focusing on new equipment installations and modernizations and service and repair. And I started to understand why they depend on really knowledgeable, capable vendors to do this work. And but we also support the things that they need for elevator cab shell replacements, entrances, doors, things that are mostly sheet metal fabricated items. And when I was trying to just get my head wrapped around the scope of everything we do at the beginning, when I would ask Iona, I would ask Vasile, they would say, "Oh, everything, we do everything," And I thought, wow, that sounds a lot. That's a bit overwhelming. But I could tell that whenever somebody came to them with something new that they hadn't done or that they hadn't done in a long time, they were always very excited about it. They loved the challenge. They were really enthusiastic about this market and anything that a customer could bring to them, because they understood innately that if you solve your customers' needs, you'll always be in demand and in favor with them. And so I thought, wow, you guys are just really enthusiastic about this elevator industry, even if you can't articulate to me everything that we do. And so it just seemed to make sense in the beginning that as I spoke to other people, other vendors, sometimes, like certain markets that are mechanically oriented, you feel like people are just sometimes they're just kind of there, and they don't have the same passion for what they do. They're just things are technical for them. Right. And this the passion was clear, and I thought that suits us. It suits my personality. It would be a good trademark for us to have. There were no other elevator enthusiasts that I could find, or who at least were using that term in my quick exploration. 13 years ago. And so it is certainly stuck for us. And now it's a core value for the people here on the team, and it's part of who we are and our branding.
So clarify that a little bit, because I have seen your title as Chief Elevator Enthusiast, but kind of like Subway has sandwich artists, your whole team is enthusiasts. Is that correct?
That's correct. Yeah, the whole team. I mean, we don't wear it on our sleeve, so to speak. It's not in our signatures beyond myself. It's I do use that, I guess, as a bit of personal branding as well. But when I can tell you right now that when we interview and screen and we hire, we do talk about that. And when we welcome people to the team, we welcome them as a fellow elevator enthusiast to the team. That's in the welcome emails. That's in the language. Beyond that, once they're on board, we don't beat people over the head with it. We're not trying to be too corny about it or too catchy, like we have to have a catch line all the time. Work, but it is a relatively sincere thing that we want to make sure people understand when they come here, is that we're passionate about what we do. And as cliche as that sounds, it's still very important, because if you truly can find that passion and you can give it to other people on the team, the days that they don't have it, it makes a difference. It really does. It's customers see it and feel it. They can really tell. So
sure. Well, and you're obviously in a niche of the industry that the customers do see. They do interact. They don't see the machine room. They don't see, they don't like me. I don't know MRL other than somebody explained it to me, because I never go to the machine room, and I wouldn't even know where to look for it. And yet the feeling of stepping into that elevator cab is obviously very different than some of the others that I've been in. And so you've kind of found that place where customers do get excited, and then you can kind of share that with them, is what I'm hearing.
Correct. Yeah. Especially related to this work, this interior work. Exactly. We hope that, even when we connect with an elevator contractor who's somewhere else in the US, they might not be a local contractor, and they're just reaching out about some doors they need and or a sill that they need, that the profile wasn't the most standard thing, and our guys jump on it right away and they ask the right questions, and they can see, oh, okay, these guys are on top of it. They really seem to care. They're really into it. They're not just shoving a bunch of forms at me and saying, fill this out, and then we'll have engineering look at it when you send it in, and then we'll get back to you. They're engaged in the Q&A, because we kind of, I think what we really share that passion for is that problem solving passion. We understand that if anybody comes to us, it's because they have a need. And again, that can sound cliche, and it's true for so many businesses, but it can be a scary thing when your team doesn't understand that, or doesn't lead with that desire to make my customers' needs be met in the most simple and direct way possible, or even anticipate their needs. That's something we did a lot in hospitality before I got to here, and my hospitality background certainly served me well in this industry, is trying to anticipate. We would say anticipate your guests' needs. People are checking in at your resort, and what is it they need? What is it that they're not saying that you can be ahead of them and know that they already need that, or try to present that? And so it's the same thing here. And of course, again, as we grow, as we mature, we have more resources and we're better organized for that. But we've thought that way for a long time, and it does seep into what we do. And so I think that the term is really accurate for us. And we found a number of customers who, they kind of get excited about it, because if you work with a board and they've been tasked with remodeling the elevators, it hasn't happened in 20, 30 years, and now we're finally doing it. The money's set aside, it's approved, and you've got either a committee or a few people on the board, and this is their job. And now they're going to spend the next usually 3 months working with you on this. That's about common for the higher end projects with the larger budgets that are our design build projects. They become elevator enthusiasts, because all of a sudden they start looking at every elevator everywhere they go. And the customers that I still have a few projects that I'll handle personally, from the beginning and through the design phase. And they all have my cell phone number. Everybody in this industry has my cell phone number. They'll get excited and they'll text me a photo at 8:30 at night, and they'll say, "Hey, I just saw these elevators at this building. Did you guys do those, or do you know these, or what do you think about this floor?" Love it. I still love it to this day.
Send pictures, right? What about this color? Does it go well with our carpet?
Sure, right. And whenever it's good to have boundaries. I definitely preach and live a life-work balance. I don't say work-life anymore, because I realize life has to come first. And
I
so,
like that.
yeah, we that is definitely another core value here at this company. And it's interesting because I think at some businesses, people get scared that if you have this, if you tell your employees and you tell your team that, you know, a work-life balance is important, or as we say it, a life-work balance is important, they get worried that people might get too comfortable. They think work is not important. And it's quite the contrary, because if you respect the life-work balance and you understand that we want to be flexible, everybody has a life outside of work, and we spend more hours at work, but you know what we do outside of work, you know, people who are near and dear to us are more important in the bigger picture. What we find is that we want to spend time with our families and be present outside of work. So the time we spend at work has to be more productive. We have to put more value on the time that we're here and be smarter and do things better and get to the root of problems faster and create solutions more efficiently and eloquently, you know, year after year and as we go. And if we can do that, then we can have the life work balance, and we can still meet the needs of our customers and the people who come to us and be there for our families. And I think that's, you know, that's really key. But when I give my phone number out and people text me at night, I tell them, don't worry about it, right? Because if I'm with my family and I'm with my kids, I'm with my kids. My phone's somewhere else. But as soon as I see it, I'm going to respond. I'm going to be excited with you about that photo that you sent of somewhere. And if I don't see it, we get through the morning, that's fine too. But we draw people in and they become elevator enthusiasts with us on these projects, because it is, you know, if you're doing it once every 20, 30 years, which is kind of what the rhythm is like, then it is a big deal. We've had customers, and it's a little bit morbid, but we've been sitting in meetings. They say, these are the last elevators I'm ever going to see. You know, I retired here. I'm going to die here. I want them to be good because
I want to do it right.
Elevator interior probably, you know, in this lifetime. And when they put that on you, you're like, oh, geez, you know, like, this is kind of a big deal, right? It's for you, it might just feel a little bit like another project, but to somebody else, it's their home. It's what they step in and out of every day.
Right. It's going to be their legacy on that committee.
That's also true, right? You're helping these committee members and these board members be successful, and understanding that early was important, right? I'm not just trying to deliver a beautiful elevator interior that meets the building's needs. I'm trying to help these people that I'm work with, who are representing a larger population in their building, be as successful as they can be. And almost always it's their first time doing a project like this. It's rare that we work with somebody who already went through a previous elevator. I mean, a property manager, yes, but you know, they're not the ones making the hard decisions. They're just coordinating.
Sure.
The board members are the ones, you know, I talk a lot about condos. When it comes to working directly with owners, office buildings, office properties, we get a lot of repeat business. That's different. And that's fun because they do one project, maybe two. They know how you operate. They just put everything in our hands after that. And we just get to rinse and repeat on their properties. And that's exciting too, because when you have that, you know, business at the speed of trust kind of feeling, it really works well for everybody. And that's why people like to work with the vendors they like, as long as the performance stays there, because you're in a relationship where you know what to expect from one another. And I think that's a good thing that has a lot of merit.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, and the way I kind of view it, I've never thought of myself as a designer or very artistic. And so there's some anxiety that comes up for me just thinking of, oh my gosh, what would I do if I were in that position? And so just having someone like you and your firm I could call and say, yeah, it needs to look good. And I'm not even sure what that means. And it better not clash with the carpet I wouldn't be a good judge of that. So just kind of hand that off.
That is definitely one of the biggest value adds and distinguishing factors of our company specifically, not just in the market segment that we're in, but in the way we operate and how we bring resources to the customer. Our first position, even though we're an elevator contractor, is really more like interior designer. And Iona went for interior design in Chicago for 4 years, became her passion. She came home in 2006 to be back, you know, where her family was, and kind of fell into this business, as people often do in this industry, and then fell in love with it right away. I thought, wow, I can take my passion for interior design, I can apply it to elevators. And as she started interfacing with project opportunities, especially in Miami Beach, especially around hospitality, hotels, condos, people had ideas of what they wanted, and they would speak to her, and oh wow, she gets it. It's like
Cool.
you see the movie, like, oh, she speaks Prada. Like she spoke interior design and elevator design right away.
Right.
And that is very helpful for people because, again, the larger constituency of clients don't have that experience. They don't have that ability. It's not like trying to pick out a nice throw pillow for your sofa, right? There's a bit more to it than this. It has to really check a lot of boxes. It has to work inside of the elevator equipment in the building, which may be changing because a lot of the work we do is in the modernization segment. So the equipment that's there is going to be different. And so you can't hang your hat on what's already been in the building for 30 years. You have to know what's going in and understand what the new equipment is like and what limitations are there, and have some collaboration and coordination with the elevator contractor if you're not coming in through them. So when we bring a new person into our team and they're working in sales or estimating or design, there's a lot to understand, because from the outside, it might seem like, man, what's the big deal? It's like this little box. There's not much space here. Like, how much design savvy could a person need to be successful at this? And, I can see why it could easily be underestimated and oversimplified, because I felt that way when I started here, having been in the business for a long time. And I'm sure if there are any other people who work at the elevator cab companies watching this, they're nodding their heads right now and going, oh yeah, as soon as you start seeing what can go wrong, you'll understand what the challenges are around designing and installing elevator interiors.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Most of the companies I know won't even do flooring. Like, any elevator contractor who subcontracts won't touch flooring, won't let their subs do flooring, because that one thing alone right there is so fraught with challenges, and the success rate feels so low for most companies. And it's interesting, right? Again, it's easy on paper to see it and say, why? It's such a small little box. Why can't you put a floor easily and successfully in an elevator and have it perform well? But there's a lot of reasons why. So.
Oh yeah. Yeah. Well, let's talk a minute about obviously 25 years. Tell me about year one. How did Vasile Elevator get off the ground? What was that like?
Sure. Yeah, it's a pretty neat story, because it is one of these American success stories. European immigrant decides he wants a business. Vasile Burka is my father-in-law, so our company name comes from his first name. And so he's a Romanian immigrant. He came to the United States in the late 80s, actually on October 31st, Halloween, 1988.
That was a bad time in Romania, if I'm not mistaken.
It was. The reason he came is because, like so many people who come from different places around the world, it was a communist country at the time. Opportunities for the outlook was really, really bleak, and for what your family could expect. They've been under communism at that time for a very long time, and so he escaped from Romania and wanted a better life. Made it to the U.S., left his wife and his two kids behind until he could send for them. And in the year and a half before he got them here is when the Berlin Wall fell, the Eastern bloc of the USSR crumbled. Romania had their revolution. They executed their president and his wife on national television on Christmas Day in 1989.
He was a tough dude, as I understand. I mean, just not a lot of friendly leaders, as I recall.
No, he wasn't revered by his people, at least. And so there's still some sentiment towards communism among people in Eastern Europe, because what they look back on is, things at least were predictable and everybody had a job, and there's been a lot of inflation and other challenges in certain parts of Eastern Europe since then. But he got here to the States, got established, and in the beginning, he had nothing when he came here. He stayed with a friend. He worked around construction. He had been a crane operator in Romania and hoped to do that here. Wasn't possible. Didn't have a license to operate a crane here. English language skills were okay, but not great. Heavy accent. So he just hung around construction, realized I need a new career. He was 38 when he arrived here in the U.S. So it's, you're kind of that midway point in life where you got to pick something else now and stick with it. And he went to work for an elevator company here in South Florida in their shop, very much like this, the company that built cabs and installed interiors. And he worked in the shop in the beginning. Eventually, they had nobody in the field, and they desperately needed to install an interior. So a manager grabbed him one day and, you work with tools in the shop. You must be able to do this. Let's go install this elevator interior. What do we need? He's like,
right.
We need tools. We need to bring tools. We need a way to get the tools in the job. Let's go do it. And So they did it, and he was great. And they, oh, you can do this. And so he started installing the interiors. And over 10 years, he worked for 2 different companies down here, Bryce Southern and what's the other one he worked for? Interlift. And then he realized they struggle to find anybody who can install interiors the way I can. He had a lot of talent. He was really fast, really good problem solver. He didn't have experience doing it, but when you grew up in a communist country where resources were really limited and you had to improvise all the time, he was a master of that. And
resourceful.
So,
yeah,
that's right. That's right. Very resourceful. And so he determined that he could do this himself, and he wanted to do it himself. It was his American dream to have his own business, to work for himself. And so after 10 years, he struck out on his own, and he registered his company. And I mean, he really, to be honest, he really had no idea how to get the business. He knew how to do the work. He wasn't sure. I mean, he had an idea where the work comes from. You know,
Sure.
He understood elevator contractors will subcontract for this. And so actually, Iona was in her senior year of high school, and he made the leap of faith to go out on his own. And all of a sudden, he kind of did it without a true plan of having a customer base. And he realized after like 6 weeks, he hadn't had a job, hadn't had a lead, a strong community. He's the breadwinner for his family. His wife's at home taking care of the kids. And so he gave the yellow pages to Iona. He put the phone book in front of her, and he said, call to every elevator company and make me an introduction. Ask for the manager, make me an introduction.
Wow.
She's like, Dad, I don't want to do this. He's like, no, I need you. She has the best English. It's hard to say no to her. She's very pleasant. And so she didn't want to do it. And she's like, this is your problem. This isn't my problem. There's a lot of kids, we feel that way about their parents. But she did. She called around, and I can't imagine calling up TKE in Miami, a big operation, and just asking
especially
for
the 17, 18-year-old, right? Like, hey, want to sell you a cab.
What department? You want new equipment? You want modernization? You want repair? What manager? But she did, and somehow Vasile got an opportunity. And it's neat to even be aware of some of the early people who worked with him that are still in the industry today, who gave him a chance and who worked with him, and then who quickly found favor with him, because his style was very refreshing for anybody who was responsible for contracting work and getting work done, because he made it very easy. It was like really no risk. You didn't have to give him a deposit. He would buy everything. He would install it. He would tell you almost like a motto. He would say, look, if there's one thing you don't like, I'll rip it all out, do it over. Like, he wanted to make it low risk for his customers to try him in the beginning. And then as soon as, they got hooked on that incredible response time that he had. I mean, when I started there in 2011, we were still getting a couple customers faxing us their orders. If you can imagine that things were coming in by fax. And I remember we had one local customer here, and he would fax over to Vasile. It was a 1-page document. It was all handwritten, and there'd be a sketch, just a plan view of a cab with some generic dimensions and a generic scope of work. Hey, I want a ceiling with 6 lights. I want this laminate, 7 panels, and rubber floor, and 1 handrail on the rear wall, round. And then it would say, like, can you do it for $4,000 at the time? Something like that, right?
Wow.
And Vasile would get the fax, and he would look at it, and he would read through it, and then he would cross out the price and write no, 4,100, and he would fax it back. And then he would go right into the shop and just start working on it. Like, that was it. Order acknowledged, materials already moving, and we're rolling, right? And if you didn't have that job ready for him to install within a week, he was kind of upset and perturbed. Like, hey, that was him. He would jump. He was ready to go. So it was a bad thing if you contracted him for a job that was 3-4 months out. Because he would get antsy. He's ready to do it. He's a man of action, always, not a man of words.
That's awesome.
Not a man of paperwork. He just likes to jump in and do it.
So tell us about, you had mentioned his first invoice. Tell us a little bit about how that went.
Right. So when he did this first job for somebody, and he installed the elevator interior, and then a couple of days later they gave him a call. Hey, Vasile, great job. Everything looks fantastic. Thanks. We've got another one for you right away. Send me over an invoice. I'm going to close this one out and get you paid. And then I've got another one for you maybe next week. I want to get the information over to you. And so Vasile hung up the phone, and he didn't know what an invoice was. And instead of asking, he just didn't do anything. And then a day or two later, the customer calls him back, and he said, hey, Vasile, please, send me over an invoice. I got another job. I want to close this one out. And then, he he had to say, hey, I'm sorry, what is what is invoice, And they're like a bill, and they're like, you know what, I'm going to send you over something. You just sign it. And so we can pay you. And then we want to have you do this other job. And it's incredible to think of somebody starting a business in the 2000s, here in the United States, and not really knowing what an invoice was, and
Right.
Really what that means about the type of determination that he had, and the just fearlessness to just jump in.
Absolute confidence that this is going to work out, right? We're just going to do a great job. We're going to do the work, and things will happen. It's amazing.
Right. And he's told me when we've spoken about it, anytime we spoke about growth, or especially in the early days when I worked with him, he told me, he's like, look, I've never had to wait for work or look for work. He's like, I've always had, once he started, he's always had work, because he believed if you do good work for people, they're always going to come back to you, right?
Yeah.
Even if you didn't have all the polish of some other companies, they're going to come back to you because the work is solid. You did what you said, you delivered it every time. And he's right. But of course, as you grow, you want to add resources to what you do, presentation to what you do. That was a challenge between he and I early on. He did not like most marketing related things that were happening when I started, because at the time the business didn't have a website, they didn't have logos on their vehicles. There were a lot of just the normal trappings of marketing, and not even advertising, but just validating who you are as a company when people interface with you and you pull up at their building. And he wasn't a big fan of that for whatever reason. And I had to explain to him, I said, you have this great reputation. People in the elevator industry already know who you are, and you do great work. But I could start a company tomorrow, go to a print shop, get somebody who makes a nice logo and makes me nice brochures, sets up a website for me, go talk to a few property managers, and they'd look at my stuff, and then they'd look at you. You don't have anything to show them. You have a Bell South email address, and no website, and you're pull up in these white unmarked vans. I said, what's a property manager going to think, down here? I said, it's going to be tough. It's not fair, right? Because the other person might not know anything, and you're way more knowledgeable. But we live in an age where people evaluate things based on what they're used to, what they can see online. And so you can't, you don't have to fall all over yourself about it, but you can't ignore it. You can't discredit that we're, and we're shallow, right? We're going to only just scroll for a second, and we're just going to look for 2 or 3 things that tell our brain, like, okay, this is legitimate. And then we're going to, right? But if we don't find those 2 or 3 things, right? When you pull up a new restaurant,
and anymore, websites kind of one of those things that do they exist? And if there's no websites, like they don't exist. I mean, wasn't that way 30, 40 years ago, right? But as time has changed, it's like, no, that's how you show that you are in business, pretty much.
Right. And it's kind of like, it's like having a storefront, right? It's sort of, so to speak. I don't think people are spending in our industry lots of time on website, on other vendors' websites, suppliers' websites. I could be wrong. I think it's more of just a validation thing, or if you can find quickly what you're looking for, you'll go back more often. Again, we're used to doing everything fast and getting answers fast today. Thanks to AI, now things are getting even easier and faster for the people who are already using this tool. And so, you don't have, again, I don't think you have to get carried away with it, but there's certain things that need to be there for a customer to just feel secure about you, and to feel safe when they interact with you.
Absolutely. So you say you've been there, 13 years, you kind of came halfway through. What is one of the biggest things that you've learned over this time? I mean, it was a career shift for you.
Yeah, that's a great question. There've been a lot of things that I learned. I think one of the neat things that I've learned, it's not something job specific, how much people love this industry who are in this industry. I came from a completely different industry, hospitality, and hospitality is kind of like a party industry. Whether you're on the restaurant side or hotel side, it's kind of that vibe. People get burned out really a lot, and then but people do stay in it quite a bit. But in this industry, there's so many owner operators, so many family companies, people who work for the OEMs and larger companies rarely leave. They shift around, they build their career in this industry, and there's so much respect that people give one another when you're in this industry. Early on, I kind of expected, if you work for Otis, you don't like the mechanic from Thyssen, or vice versa, right? Not true at all. Really, I've seen almost none of that. It's people are so supportive. It's a brotherhood and sisterhood. And, once you're in this industry and you start to meet other people, even competitors, like so many people that we have that on paper are competitors of ours, I have great relationships with, and I think the world of, and I would go out of my way to help them out. And it's neat to see that's truly what the industry is. It's not superficial. It's something very real. And I hope it doesn't change, because there's a lot of M&A activity over the last few years. That's a hot topic, right? There's so much private equity coming into the elevator industry. I get all sorts of solicitations to talk to people on a regular basis, and it's just what it is today. But that was one of the neat things that I learned, is that you could pick up the phone and talk to somebody else. And if they're an elevator person, if they're in this industry, you don't have to be in the same room breathing the same air, because you're already, you're dealing with a lot of the same challenges, and you have a mutual respect once you're in this industry. So that was really cool to find out. Didn't realize that on day one, right? That came after being here for a few years.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And honestly, that's one of the things that really drew me to this industry, having worked in other industries, having recruited in other industries. And then when I started working with elevator people, it's about 12 years ago, just realizing that there was something very different in the culture, in the respect, the camaraderie, because the companies I had worked for before, it was kind of like, oh, that's the competitor and we just hate them. And everybody, they're just the bad guy. And we're, of course, the good guy. And so that was kind of the culture that was bred. And it's like, I don't see that either. I mean, there's, to your point, a healthy respect that, hey, we're in this together in a sense, even though we compete against each other.
Sure, right. And I mean, of course, there's still competition, and that's a good thing, and that's a healthy thing. But it's you're right. It's not like some other industries. Doesn't ever feel cutthroat or there's animosity. We have really good industry associations at state level, at the national level, and there's such a good genuine camaraderie among people in this industry. And I get to see it firsthand. I'm a golfer, and I play a lot of golf, and I get to play golf with a lot of people in Florida and around the U.S. And I'd love to see how the groups mix up. And you get people who are elevator contractors who are maybe even competitors in a sense, and they don't care. They love to get out and hang out together and talk shop. And we like to talk about what we do. And you get somebody else who understands, and you can talk to them and commiserate a little bit. Then I think our human nature kicks in, and we want that. So
yeah, I do think that's part of just the deep connection that's created is almost like comrades in arms, that, hey, we've been there, we've been in the pit, we've been, we've done these things, and not that many other people can even comprehend what that's like.
That's true. Right. That's true. Right. I wouldn't put it quite as high up as if you work in like, if you're in the armed forces or if you're a police officer or something, because then, lives are on the line and
Sure.
and you get that you can't share. But if you just come down a notch or two from that, I think you're right. If you've been on top of an elevator, if you've been in a pit, I know sometimes, there can be a little bit of, like, oh, if you haven't turned a wrench, we can't relate to one another, right? Because there's people in this industry who, they've been on the management side or, on the sales side, but they've been in and around it enough. Most people, they had some kind of sales internship. They had a little bit of field training. They still have to know about it. And I think that there's definitely a brotherhood out there. So.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. So as we get close to our time here, I wanted to just ask, what kind of advice would you give to somebody who's maybe just coming, new to this industry? Maybe like you, they've been in another industry for 10 years and they're just like, oh my gosh, here's this opportunity. Or maybe they're coming right out of college or starting with the union, or what would you say to them?
Sure. Yeah. For a young person who's looking to get into this industry or who's looking at opportunities, I think similar to many industries that you could go into, it's a very strong industry, but you need to look at the company if you can, do your diligence, try to find out what type of reputation the company has. Maybe, if you can determine what type of trajectory they have, don't be afraid to ask questions. If you get an interview opportunity, how do you invest in your operation, right? Are you a growing company just because you have a couple more customers every year, or are you increasing your capacity and your capabilities? Like, try to understand, if you're career minded, if you're growth minded, then you want to be on a team that's that way, and so that you understand that opportunities will pave the way out in front of you because the company's doing that. That was important to me throughout my career, and it has been here. And I would certainly say, don't be shy to try to ascertain that for anybody that you might be interviewing with. I mean, this industry is strong. It's a great industry. We have to keep building up. Here, like anywhere else, It's just going to be the nature of things. And so I don't think, the industry will have some fluctuations and ebbs and flows like many industries do. But overall, I didn't consider it actually when I was in college. You try to find what were the bulletproof industries, and you thought about healthcare and others, and I had no interest in those. And I didn't even consider this. And so it was neat to find out how strong it is. But I think the due diligence is the main thing I would tell a young person who's looking at it. Like, try to make sure you're on a great team. And then once you get on a team, don't forget about your personal branding, right? Like, your personal branding, it's you, it's your career. LinkedIn, you mentioned, such a strong tool, right? Such a strong tool. Your LinkedIn page is your page. Like, you're on a team. And when you're on that team, you advocate for that team, you beat the drum of that team. You make sure you're a strong player wherever your role is on that team. But don't forget, this is also your career. And hopefully, if things work out well, you'll be on that team for a long time. But if not, you want to make sure that people understand who you are and they see what your strengths are, and you don't have to prove it all over again to somebody else if you start over. Because the people who stand out, people are looking around the industry all the time, and people are knocking on their door. And maybe they stay where they are, but they're not going to have a hard time. Like, if you're in this industry and you're good at what you do, you don't ever worry about your job, right? You just try to be the best where you are, because if you're not making it on this team because it's not right for you, the next team is waiting to pick you up if you're that standout person.
Absolutely. Yeah. Anything else you want to share with our viewers before we end?
I think, the one thing that's stuck out to me, and I'm going to circle this completely back to your podcast, is that, the first one that I listened to was Don Gelastino. And what a great guy to listen to. Of course, that New York accent draws us all in, and feel like you're watching some Hollywood actor be interviewed when he's speaking. But I remember when he closed his interview with you, he talked about knowing your numbers as far as advice that he would give to somebody who might be up and coming in business. So maybe not that person just coming out of college who's getting on a team, but somebody who's running a team. If you're running a team or running a company, if you're an entrepreneur, and he was talking about getting a job, and he'd figure out the costs and throw 30% on top of it, 35%, win the job, and he's winning jobs, and then didn't realize he was digging himself into a hole until a CPA pointed it out, because the overhead wasn't being factored in, and maybe some miscellaneous things weren't being accounted for. And he talked about the importance of truly knowing your numbers. I remember that hit home with me. That was hard to believe. It's probably almost 2 years ago now, but right. That hit home with me. And I thought, you're right, because when I came into this business, it was a family-run company. Like a lot of family-run companies, the numbers is there cash in the bank, and are we making payroll? And reporting wasn't really a thing. And when you have owner operators, the owners are contributing so much. So they have other income sometimes. Facility rented out bays in the building that had income coming in. So the business overhead felt much lower. And then he worked 80 hours a week, and Iona was there. So you didn't realize, like, it felt easier in that time, right? To be really profitable. And what can happen is you can get comfortable, and then when you expand, add resources, insurance goes up and overhead goes up. And if you didn't know how to calculate those in, and then year to year look at them, all of a sudden you're looking around going, I feel the profit. It seemed like it was better when we were smaller, and you're trying to figure out why. A lot of times it's because you don't know your numbers. You're not really sure or diligent about how you sell your work. And so I would reiterate what Don said. That is probably the most ironclad advice for any entrepreneur that we can give, is if you don't know them, and I mean know them, like, you should be able to rattle them off. And I'll be honest, there's still things today in our numbers that I don't know, and I realize that, gosh, I'd have to go look that up. I'd have to go put more attention on that. But I've become more concerned when I feel that way to try to do something about it, because it's easy to get comfortable and complacent, and that's where things sneak in, and it gets it sneaks up on you, really, is what happens. So that's my advice. Know your numbers.
Beautiful. Thank you, Nathan. I appreciate you being here. Like I say, it took a little bit of doing, but we're here, and I thank you. It's been great.
Cheers, Matt. Thank you very much. Enjoy very much. Hope to keep watching this for years to come.
All right. Thanks. Have a great day.
You too. Bye.
Thank you for listening to the Elevator Careers podcast, sponsored by the Allred Group, a leader in elevator industry recruiting. You can check us out online at elevatorcareers.net. Please subscribe, and until next time, stay safe.